The ASEAN Business Advisory Council, under Indonesia's chairmanship, aims to serve as a leading voice of businesses in the region.
Under Indonesia's chairmanship, the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KADIN, will take ASEAN's private-led commitments to the next level with the theme of ASEAN centrality, innovating towards greater inclusivity. ASEAN-BAC will demonstrate the region's relevance through significant policy reforms and advocacies within and beyond the Southeast Asian region.
Therefore, the ASEAN Business Advisory Council Indonesia has established 5 key priority items for 2023. They are digital transformation, sustainable development, food security, healthcare resilience, and trade and investment facilitation as the 5 main focus areas of our regional policy reforms.
We are committed to drive the change and create concrete impact through 8 legacy projects. ASEAN QR Code, Marketplace Lending Platform, Wiki Entrepreneur, Net Zero Hub, Carbon Center of Excellence, One Shot Campaign, ASEAN Business Entity, an inclusive closed-loop model for agricultural products. The ASEAN-BAC will host 2 prominent events. First, the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, and second, the ASEAN Business Awards in September 2023, to emphasize the importance of ASEAN centrality in the global economy while driving an inclusive and sustainable economic development within the region. ASEAN-BAC is ready to foster more beneficial and constructive relationships across our dialogue partners, with peace, prosperity, people, planet, and partnership as the core values.
We believe that centrality is the destination, innovation is the vehicle, and inclusivity is a non-negotiable practice throughout this journey. Together, we welcome you to join us and shape ASEAN for better tomorrow.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the ASEAN Carbon Center of Excellence practice sharing session. Our theme for today is aligning Asian carbon markets with global climate mitigation efforts. This is a series of webinars that will be held on the last week of each month, leading to ASEAN Business and Investment Summit on September. This webinar has been organized by Indonesia Commodity and Derivatives Exchange, ICDX, in partnership with Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and ASEAN Business Advisory Council. My name is Muhammad Rizky Zain. I'm the Head of External Affairs and Government Relations of ICDX. I will be facilitating a discussion today with the support of a very great team that supports me from behind the scene. Okay, before we start, I would like to make a housekeeping announcement. First, this webinar will be recorded. The recording will be shared on the event's website. If you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A box. And due to the limited space in our Zoom, if you want to follow this discussion, please follow it via YouTube with the link we have provided. So we have quite a packed agenda. I would like just to have a quick overview. So it will be opened by moderator, me. And then we'll have a context-setting speech from Pak Arsyad Rashid, the chair of ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Continuing, we'll have the first presentation from Darsono Hartono. And then we'll have the second presentation from Andrea Bonzani from ITA. And next, we'll have the presentation from Laila Hanfar from Bloomberg NAV. And we'll have 10 minutes Q&A sessions after all the presenters have spoken. And after that, we'll have a closing by the moderator. Okay, next. Sorry. Okay, so as you can see, we have quite of a packed agenda. So please use the Q&A box for any comments and questions, as my team will monitor the box until the end of the presentation sessions. So without further ado, let us now continue to our next agenda, the context setting remarks from ASEAN Business Advisory Council, from Bapak Arshad Rashid.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to first congratulate the organizing committee of this webinar and all relevant stakeholders involved. Bloomberg NEF, the International Emission Trading Association, or IETA, ICDX, and of course, ASEAN Business Advisory Council. We are so thrilled to see the continuous conversation on the carbon market and how ASEAN countries may collectively push this agenda for the greater benefits of our society. Under Indonesia's chairmanship this year, ASEAN-BAC has identified 5 strategic pillars that have been carefully chosen to align with the broader economic and social objectives of the ASEAN community. Among these 5, a notable key focus is sustainable development, recognizing the challenges that climate change and sustainability issues pose to our economies and societies. We have also committed to significant legacy programs under these pillars: the Carbon Center of Excellence and the ASEAN's Net Zero Hub. These legacy programs are key to unleash the potentials of ASEAN's regional carbon market and accelerate our agenda for energy transition. ASEAN member states have started to think strategically about the impact our region may give to the world by optimizing our decarbonization efforts. We acknowledge ASEAN's contribution to 8% of the global emission, and therefore Southeast Asia can actually play a significant role in global decarbonization efforts by investing in clean energy and adopting sustainable practices, by investing in nature-based solutions that transform the mindset of our businesses. This is not a new idea, but all ASEAN countries have different stages, capacities, and resources to move. Therefore, a platform to facilitate more practice sharing, dialogues, and networking among the like-minded stakeholders are necessary. Therefore, as we mentioned before, we aim to deliver 2 legacy programs under the Sustainable Development pillar. First, the ASEAN Net Zero Hub, which acts as a platform for stakeholders to share knowledge and best practices for net zero, allowing businesses to improve their path towards the zero emission and even on how to finance the journey. Second is the ASEAN Carbon Center of Excellence, which intends to be another platform for stakeholders to share best practices and on carbon market and carbon trading, and to set the standards across ASEAN. Both legacy programs are important to one another. Through this, ASEAN businesses can accelerate their net zero plan much more effectively and at the same pace. I fully support the idea of establishing the ASEAN Alliance for Carbon Market Scaling. This brilliant initiative must be announced to the ASEAN leaders in September to show that businesses always come into action, providing concrete and long-lasting benefits to all of us. You will see the legacy leads giving you more details today, and we are grateful and wishful that BNEF, IETA, ICDX are on board to our efforts. Let's have this as a collective action. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you at the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit and the ASEAN Sustainability Forum this early September 2023 or this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Arshad, and everyone for hearing the opening remarks. And I would like to point out Pak Arshad's point on that decarbonization is not a very new idea, but all ASEAN countries have different stages, capacities, and resources to move forward. Therefore, we need a platform to facilitate more practice sharing, dialogue, and networking among the stakeholders. Okay, moving on to our next agenda, it is now my pleasure to invite our first speaker, Bapak Darsono Hartono from ASEAN Business Advisory Council. So Pak Darsono is actually the program lead of ASEAN Carbon Center for Excellence. one of the two legacy programs that Pak Arsyad mentioned before. And yeah, Pak Darsono is actually currently the CEO of the PT Rimba Makmur Utama, PT RMU, and he have a degree of financial engineering from Cornell University, and then working in New York. So right, your CV is not even fit in the slides. So without further ado, Pak, let me invite you to take the stage. Please, Pak Darsono Hartono, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Zain. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for all of you who attended this webinar. My name is Darsono Hartono. I'm the program lead in one of the legacy projects that Pak Arsyad mentioned earlier. It is called Carbon Center of Excellence. If somebody can help me to do the sharing of the screen for the presentation. I think I want to start with basically tell you what ASEAN-BAC is all about. So ASEAN-BAC is ASEAN Business Advisory Council. It was established with a bold vision underlying three objectives. First is to provide strategic advice and private sector feedback to ASEAN leaders. And second is to encourage stronger regional economic integration. And lastly is to promote legacy projects for long-lasting and direct impact. As you know, Indonesia this year is actually chairing ASEAN. So, continued from our success in B20, I think our chairman Arsyad really wants to show that we can do this and work together by looking into these 5 priority programs that actually, have a that has a legacy program in each of the priorities. Just to give you an idea, typically ASEAN chairmanship, a country will only introduce 2 to 3 legacy projects. And I think Indonesia, as we know, we are very aggressive and we're optimistic. We actually are promoting 8 legacy projects. So 2 of them, some is to do with sustainability, in this case, Carbon Center of Excellence and ASEAN Net Zero Hub. Next. So just to walk you through the team that are involved in this, my name is Darsono. I think you saw Pak Arsyad, and we have Bernardino Vega as our alternate chair. Our knowledge partner for sustainability working group is held by PwC, and these are the people that are involved, and we are really looking forward to work with any of you who think that can give us some input for this coming chairmanship. Next. As I mentioned, I think the working group aims to deliver the following legacy program. First is the ASEAN Net Zero Hub, and the second one is ASEAN's Carbon Center of Excellence. I want to focus more on the Carbon Center of Excellence because more on our side. So I think we aim to promote understanding of carbon market for business leaders, market participants, as well as regulators. And I think what we are planning to do is, we want to have this ASEAN Alliance on Carbon Market established by our chairmanship. So now we will probably announce it in September. I will talk about it more in the detail, how, why we need that and how we can participate. So I think, we realize that ASEAN business with growing commitment to achieve net zero can accelerate their plan by participating in both of these legacy programs, as net zero transformation heavily relies on the carbon market itself. Next. So as mentioned, I think, the Carbon Center of Excellence, next please, is aiming into 2 things, which is the Carbon Knowledge Hub and the Practice Sharing Center. The good news is I think we are working with Bloomberg NEF as the host for this, so we can actually learn. And it's actually a continuation from what we did with B20 last year. So B20 last year, we also have a legacy program of Carbon Center of Excellence, but we don't have the alliance. What makes it different this year is we realize that there is importance of creating a framework, standards, and for the regional ASEAN for the purpose of carbon market, so we can have high integrity, high quality project as part of it, as well as working together with the government in terms of putting the policy in place. So I think we are looking forward to have this alliance to be part of an institution to help bridging the gap, because like Arsyad mentioned earlier, each country are different in terms of their capacity and capability in this particular subject. So I think we are here to help everybody. I think there's a motto of ASEAN this year is we will leave nobody behind. We are inclusive. I realize Indonesia is the largest country in ASEAN, but we will always respect our fellow ASEAN members to be part of this initiative, and we will not leave them behind. Next. So mention it was first, Carbon Center of Excellence was first launched during the OB20 Summit in 2022. Just to give you an idea, basically it's a continuation, but right now we're focusing more in ASEAN, and we're going to create an alliance which is different than what we did in B20. Just give you an idea how things are in terms of where the website and the knowledge center is. Next, the Carbon Knowledge Hub give the know-how and insight to navigate carbon market. Next slide, please. So these are the partners that have signed on to the B20 Carbon Center of Excellence. And then you will hear from our colleague, the Bloomberg NEF, in terms of this particular initiative. Next. We also do practice sharing, in this instance, and basically we want to build a capacity. So as you know, we have been doing roadshows, talking with a lot of participants. I was in London with our chair. We have done some roundtable, discussion. And I think with effective webinar like this, we actually try to reach out to everybody in the region to kind of promote this idea that we can work together, to build a carbon market that is good for the region, particularly in ASEAN. So we are running some online event as well to basically build the gap in terms of capacity for different countries as we learn throughout this journey. Next. So this is just the calendar event for 2022. We were doing a roadshow in the UK, 15 May, a few weeks ago. And then today we're doing our first webinar. There will be another webinar that we do prelude until our sustainability summit in September 2nd, where we're going to launch our ASEAN Alliance on Carbon Market. And all of you are welcome to come to Jakarta in September to attend our ABIS as well, the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. And then we will have a BNEF Jakarta Forum on 5th of September. And then we will continue even after all leaders are no longer in Jakarta in September. We will have another event in November as well. So my last slide, I want to talk about the ASEAN Alliance on Carbon Market. So I think the idea is, ASEAN AACM will act as a focal point for international partnership, focusing on carbon market with activities including capacity building and technical assistance. I think the objective is to build momentum to champion scaling up voluntary carbon market and compliance market across ASEAN. So like I mentioned, we'll launch it during our summit in September to be attended by Southeast Asian domicile signatories and partners, and also partner outside ASEAN. So in the next few weeks, we will actually send invitation for all of you. If you want to be part of this alliance, we are taking membership and see how things are. With that, I think that's it for me, Mr. Zain, and happy to answer any question, any inquiry later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pak Darsono, for the explanation about the Carbon Center of Excellence. I am sure after hearing your explanation, there will be a lot of people here that will immediately access the Knowledge Hub and past practice sharing sessions, recording, or even participate in the ASEAN Alliance on Carbon Market. However, before you all did that, let us continue with an even more exciting session. Our next speaker is based in New York. I would like to personally appreciate his participation on this event when I don't think it's not even sunrise over there. Allow me to introduce Andrea Bonzani, the International Policy Director of the International Emission Trading Association, ITA. How are you, Andrea?
Hello, everyone. Good morning from New York.
Yeah,
and I have to apologize for my voice. I don't usually speak like that, but I hope I can go on for my 10 minutes.
Sure, pleasure accepted. Okay, so I would like to read Andrea's profile. So he's currently the International Policy Director of the International Emission Trading Association. It is a non-profit business organization aimed to establish a functional international framework for trading in greenhouse gas emission reductions. Its members include leading international companies from across the carbon trading cycle, and it seeks to develop an emissions trading regime that results in real and verifiable greenhouse gas emission reductions, while also balancing the economic efficiency with environmental integrity and social equity. So without further ado, the platform is yours, Andrea.
Thank you, Pazain, for the invitation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'll start with a very brief introduction of AITA. AITA is an association of over 300 companies. And our mission is to, as Zain just said, to promote the establishment of carbon markets worldwide and generally market-based solutions to climate change. So I'll give an overview of how AITA and its members see carbon markets growing in ASEAN countries and the Asia-Pacific region more broadly. And then I'll say a few words about the activities of AITA in the region and beyond. So in this map, I give an overview of where we are in terms of carbon pricing instrument in the Asia-Pacific region. And the picture we see is one of fragmentation. Each country is at a different stage of development and is implemented different types of instruments. We have three functioning emission trading systems in the region. There's China, there's South Korea, and there's New Zealand. Each of them work in isolation. There's no connection between these systems. And other countries have different policies that they are pursuing. Indonesia, as we know, set up a small ETS this year, which is operating for coal-fired power plants. Japan is also looking to establish an ETS in the next few years. They start with a soft launch, semi-voluntary scheme called GX League, and this is expected to become a fully functioning ETS in the future. Singapore is going through another route, carbon tax that is being implemented and is expected to grow in value over the years. Then there are countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam that are still considering options whether to go for a carbon tax or an ETS, and there's capacity building work going on. We're glad to see that carbon markets are part of the policy discussion in the majority of ASEAN countries. But for business needs clear rules and stability, predictability in the longer term. And the current picture of fragmentation is not helpful. So we do welcome initiatives such as the one of ASEAN-BAC and others to try and build that regional integration that could really make carbon markets much more applicable to businesses, especially international companies that can invest in carbon reductions and mitigation activities in the region. In the next slide, I provide an overview of where we are with the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Article 6 is the article that provides the framework for cooperation between countries on carbon reduction activities. This international cooperation between countries is voluntary, so countries do not have to cooperate, but they can do it if they believe it's beneficial to them. And here we see the ASEAN region and East Asia in general has been one of the front runners in terms of implementation. We have 3 of the 4 main buyers are in the region. So we have Japan, we have Singapore, and we have South Korea. And this graph shows the bilateral agreements between countries that have already taken place and that form the foundation for trading of carbon reductions between countries. As I said, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore leading as potential buyers. Indonesia has an agreement with Japan for the development and international trading of projects under the Joint Crediting Mechanism, JCM, which has been set up by the government of Japan. And there are other countries in the region with bilateral agreements. There's Vietnam and South Korea, Cambodia, and Laos and Vietnam with Japan. And we expect more agreements to be signed in the near future. However, this agreement have not yet resulted in concrete projects and transfers, except in one case. This is the case of Thailand, which authorized the transfer of carbon reductions from Thailand to Switzerland. This was announced at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year. So there is Swiss companies investing in electric mobility projects in Bangkok. So an activity that reduces emissions and provide other co-benefits locally. The government of Thailand agrees to authorize the transfer to Switzerland of these emissions reductions, which will be accounted towards the target of Switzerland. And of course, the benefit for Thailand is to receive inward foreign investment and reduce emissions domestically with the support of foreign capital and foreign technology. A very high potential activities if countries are ready to set up the right framework to welcome these investments. This is what I described is cooperation under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. There's also another cooperation mechanism which 4 of the Paris Agreement. And in this case, there will be a central crediting mechanism run by the United Nations, which is currently being set up. So it is not ready to credit activities, but we expect that it will be towards the end of next year, 2024. So in the next slide, there's a link, a QR code to a recent paper by AITA assessing the state of the voluntary carbon market globally. A voluntary carbon market is a different type of mechanism from the domestic carbon pricing regimes that governments can set up, and also different from the international transfers under Article 6. The voluntary carbon markets, companies can develop projects in whatever country they see the potential. Independent standards certify and validate these emission reductions. Credits are generated, and these credits are bought by corporate actors to make claims about the climate impact of their operations and their products. The voluntary market grew dramatically in the last few years. It tripled in value to $2 billion worldwide between 2019 and 2021. In the second half of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, we've seen a bit of stagnation in the market and some challenges due to increased public scrutiny. And some of the issues are addressed in our paper, and they've also been addressed by industry as a whole with some key governance initiatives that have been underway for some time. And I list them in the next slides. If we move on, the governance initiatives I was mentioning are the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, or ICBCM, and the Voluntary Carbon Market Integrity Initiative, or VCMI. These two initiatives run in parallel, and they look at different aspects of integrity in the carbon market. ICBCM focuses on the quality of the supply side of carbon credits. They've released a core carbon principal threshold standard, or CCP, and they're currently going through the main crediting programs to assess whether they meet this core carbon principle. And later this year, we will see the first carbon credits that can show the CCP label, meaning that it's a guarantee for buyers and market participants that these credits are of sufficiently high quality. VCMI looks at something different, claims meaning that when corporates buy credits in the voluntary markets, the guidance by VCMI will specify what claims can be made based on what type of credit. And we expect the release of the first code of practice at the end of next month. The launch has been announced recently. So another key, and I forgot to say, AITA is involved in both initiatives, and particularly we serve as the secretariat of ICVCM, providing support to the expert groups and the stakeholders. Another key initiative to improve the integrity of the voluntary market is the Climate Action Data Trust, or CAD Trust, which I describe in the next slide. This is an initiative led by AITA together with the World Bank and the government of Singapore. And it's what we call a metadata layer, or a meta registry. It's effectively a piece of IT infrastructure that receives information from all the participating registries. So national registries that issue carbon credits, or the registries of the independent programs such as Vera, Gold Standards, for example. They connect to CAD Trust. CAD Trust will pull the information from these from these crediting mechanisms and registries, and will make them available to the broader public. And this is expected to provide the transparency the market needs, minimize the risk of double counting, and overall improving the integrity of the market. CAD Trust was launched at the end of last year. It's based in Singapore, and the executive director of CAD Trust has recently been appointed, and will be based in Singapore. So segue to what AITA is doing to support activities in the region. In addition of being part of the integrity initiatives that I mentioned, we set up a regional hub for the Asia and East Asia region in Singapore. It will officially launch next week at the Ecosphere conference in Singapore, and it will initially have 3 staff members: the director of the Climate Action Data Trust, whom I mentioned before, as well as 2 more staff, and we expected to scale our presence and hire more people in the next months and years. Next slide, I have a quick overview of oh, no, I have one more slide about the interplay between the voluntary market and Article 6. So going forwards, we will continue to have different crediting programs. So the supply side of the market will remain fragmented, but effectively, we expect the type of credits to be credits with authorization by the host country, and credits without the authorization by the host country. The authorization is the process through which the host country, the country in which the activity takes place, commits to apply a corresponding adjustment, meaning that the reductions related to those credits will not be counted in the host country, but can be counted in another country. And of course, if the credit has a corresponding adjustment, can be used for compliance purposes internationally, whereas if it does not, it can only use for voluntary and domestic purposes. And the reductions related to that activity will be counted in the host country and will contribute to the NDC of the host country. So it will be possible for these 2 types of credits to continue to coexist in parallel. And host countries, such as Indonesia, for example, will be able to decide whether to authorize or not the credits, and whether the activity will count towards the NDC of Indonesia or will count towards the NDC of another country. Of course, if the host country finds it beneficial. And in the next slide, I have the overview I was mentioning of the main ongoing initiatives by AITA. In addition to the integrity initiative that I mentioned, we have a capacity building program for the private sector. It's called BPMI, or Business Partnership for Market Implementation. The World Bank runs the PMI, and AITA runs the BPMI. So we target key countries with high potential in carbon markets, including Indonesia, and we run activities to support the private sector in better understanding and better making use of carbon markets. Then we sponsor research, economic modeling that shows the benefits of the carbon markets and Article 6 in particular. We publish contract templates that can support the trading of emission reductions. And we're also part of some other key initiatives. And I'll mention too the ETA, the Energy Transition Accelerator, launched by the US Secretary John Kerry. And we also a co-partner of Japan's Article 6 implementation partnership, which is a capacity building initiative to build support for Article 6 transactions worldwide. Finally, my last slide is about events. We also run a series of regional climate summits every year. These are the four that will run this year. An Asia Climate Summit this year will be in Tokyo, Japan, from the 24th to 26th of October. So I invite those who are interested to scan these QR codes and go on the events webpage of our website. And the last event of the year, as usual, will be, of course, COP. And as usual, AITA will have a business hub, a pavilion at COP that will serve as the hub for the private sector and carbon markets at the Conference of Parties in the UAE. With this, I'll stop. Really happy to discuss in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for the explanation about how AITA, what is AITA actually, and how it can play a role to actually developing carbon markets in Asian countries. As you mentioned before, there has been different stages of development in carbon markets in ASEAN, and PZM and the voluntary carbon markets and the compliance carbon market are two different things. But they can still coexist. And actually, the keys for all this is integrity and transparency. Thank you. Okay, moving on, I think we still have another speaker with us here. So our next speaker is Laila Hanfar. I hope I didn't pronounce it wrong. Very sorry for that. Yeah. So Laila is actually yes. Laila is actually a corporate sustainability analyst at Bloomberg NAV. Bloomberg NAV is a strategic research provider covering global commodity markets and the disruptive technologies driving the transition to a low carbon economy. Laila research focuses on carbon offsets and the voluntary carbon market. This involves helping corporations, traders, and investors understand the market and the role carbon offsets play in achieving corporate net zero targets. Laila holds an MSc in Energy System from the University of Oxford and BA Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the American University of Sharjah. So without further ado, Laila, the platform is yours, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. I just want to make sure that the screen is showing and it's clear. Yep. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you, Zain, for the introduction. Again, my name is Laila Khanfar. I'm a corporate sustainability and carbon offsets analyst at BNAF. And I'm here today to touch on the voluntary carbon market, which has become more or less the black sheep of the energy transition. But it is our way to achieving our net zero goals, especially in the corporate sector and in hard to abate industries. So to begin, I'm sure you've all noticed how 2022 and early 2023 were turbulent times for the voluntary carbon markets. We saw a very heavy media criticism and backlash. I'm sure you remember the Guardian article at the beginning of the year and the ones that are ongoing now. This is a problem because it's cutting the market at the knees and it's preventing us from reaching its full potential that we actually need for reaching our decarbonization goals. So as mentioned, the articles, especially the ones by The Guardian that attacked avoided deforestation offsets, did cause the first drop in demand for offsets this decade. So after we saw a peak in 2021 where the demand for offsets reached 161 million tons, it dropped by 4% in 2022, reaching 155 million tons. So although certain demand for sectors grew, such as energy generation, it grew by 20%, it could not save the market from the 40% drop in demand for avoided deforestation projects. However, 155 million tons is still significant demand, and the Asia-Pacific region plays a significant role in it. So 59% of offsets retired in 2022 were created in the APAC region. But they did get the worst end of the stick, where the most popular sectors in those regions were energy generation projects. And the problem with energy generation projects is that they lack additionality, as in they are not seen as valuable to the energy transition or reducing emissions, which is why they were banned by registries such as Vera and the Gold Standard. However, and this abundance of energy generation projects and their lack of additionality is reflected in the price. So we can see that the average traded price for offsets in the APAC region is around $6.7 per ton, and that is around 30% less than the global average price of over $10 per ton. However, it was not all bad, and supply grew, although it didn't jump as it did between 2020 and 2021, where we saw an increase of 85% in supply for offsets. It still grew by 2%, reaching a record high of 255 million tons of supplied offsets. And this is promising because we saw a major increase in nascent sectors such as reforestation, which is a removal sector, and it's going to be vital as we approach 2030 and 2050, and that was by around 36%. Now, with all this talk about supply and demand, what does the voluntary carbon market actually look like? There, as Andrea mentioned as well, there are so many players in the market, and everyone is trying to take a jab at it and try to make sense of the messy but increasingly growing market. So we tried to map it out. On the left side of this slide, you can see the supply drivers, and these are project developers creating the offsets and getting them listed on registries. And on the right side, you see the demand drivers, and those can be seen in the private sector through corporations trying to meet their net zero targets, maybe governments, public sector, and those are seen in compliance markets allowing offsets in their scheme, and investors and financial institutions seeing an investment opportunity in this market. But you can see that in the middle, all the ways that offsets are being traded are becoming messy, and it's becoming very complex. But we think it's a step in the right direction because this is a sign that the market is evolving, and hopefully it will standardize and reach its potential. However, companies and corporations are not fazed by the intricacies and the opaqueness of the market, and we see them setting big and hard, ambitious net zero targets. So 80% of the Climate Action 100 Plus members, those are the heaviest emitting companies in the world, have set reduction targets that amount to around 10 gigatons of CO2 by 2050. And those would not be achievable, and they would not be realistic without incorporating carbon offsets in the voluntary carbon market in the conversation. Yet, it's great that companies are acknowledging the importance of offsets, but they should be aware that it does not come without risk. Buying offsets should be strategic and should avoid risk as much as possible, especially with an opaque market like this one, and especially with an important one, given the Article 6.4 in the Paris Agreement. So, for example, Telstra, the telecommunication company in Australia, has retired 5.85 million tons of CO2 from an energy generation project in India at a price of around $5 per ton. And that comes with risk. Not only is it energy generation sector, which, as we've mentioned, did hold was banned by registries, so they would not be viable in the near future. But also India has entertained the possibility of banning export of offsets to international companies. So companies outside of India could no longer rely on Indian offsets to neutralize their targets, their emissions, sorry. With all this talk about future risk, where do we think the carbon offset market is headed? One possibility is that the market stays the way it is now. Supply is unregulated. With that, it will always be oversupplied. Demand will grow, but it will struggle to meet with supply. And this will keep prices at criminally low price levels. So now we're starting with around $9.7 per ton, the price for offsets in 2023. It will grow to around $12.6 per ton in 2030 and only increase to $35 per ton in 2050. And to put this in context, the EU ETS carbon price has averaged at around $102 per ton in April alone. So this is problematic. Not only does it not give companies an incentive to decarbonize and look for alternative strategies, but it also drives away investment from projects that need it. This chart shows a snapshot of the voluntary carbon market in 2050 in the voluntary market scenario, the one we've just discussed. And you can see that prices will be set by energy demand sectors at around $35 per ton. What will happen in this case is that companies will eat away at the supply on the left side of the chart that is priced lower than $35 per ton and leave projects and offsets on the right side of the chart without investment. And those would be sectors such as direct air capture and BECS. And this will have major implications on APAC, as 2.6 gigatons of supply in 2050 would come from the region. And if we don't have enough investment for these projects, the market will essentially collapse. On the other hand, the other extreme scenario is that the market witnesses very strict and tight regulation, where supply for offsets is only allowed from removal projects. And this would eliminate sectors such as energy generation and avoided deforestation, the two major sectors in the market today, but it would give life to sectors such as direct air capture. And in a scenario like this, we will finally see that supply and demand are balanced, but only by a thread. And in fact, the market would be undersupplied for a short period of time between 2037 and 2044. And this is when we see prices jump and peak at $254 per ton. And the question is, will companies afford a carbon price this high? And this should force them to think about carbon offsets today before it gets too expensive. Regardless, this is where I would like to end the session on. Regardless of what scenario the market ends up following, this market still represents massive investment opportunity, and it will be valued at billions of dollars. So in a worst case scenario, in a voluntary market scenario, it will be valued at around $187 billion in 2050. And in a best case scenario, in a removals, it will be valued at $477 billion in 2050. It will even peak at a market value of $1 trillion in 2037. And that's when we see the peak in prices set by direct air capture. And yes, it's massive investment opportunity and it's too big to ignore. Thank you so much for listening and would love to answer any questions later.
Thank you so much for your the exposition, Laila. I feel like I have so much information that I haven't received before. And it's very informative. And if I would like to summarize on your points, that the carbon offsets in the carbon offsets market, the demand will grow, but the supply will actually grow faster. And the low price is very problematic because it won't give company incentives, but it will also drive the investors away. So yeah, thank you for the exposition. Okay, now I would like to open the Q&A session. My team have picked some questions from the Q&A box, and I will read them now. So for the first question, so the question was addressed for Pak Darsono, Pak, from Enda Ginting. What do you think about the Indonesian government's effort to boost the Indonesian carbon price through a domestic market? You want to answer that?
I think right now, as you know, the government of Indonesia is trying to put a final regulation on how we're going to trade credits. I think it was announced that, with our law of P2SK, which is the financial law, all carbon trading is governed by OJK, right? So I think if you listen to Pak Mahendra lately, he would love to have a carbon trading operating in September. So I think it is a very exciting moment for our country to be part of this. I think, we are working on the regulation, and Indonesia has great potential. But I think for my purpose today as ASEAN-BAC, it cannot just be Indonesia alone, right? It has to work together as a regional, just like Laila and Andrea talk about. There is a massive, conversion into certain regions, certain types of product that I think, we all know that compliance market will come. And I think before compliance market come for the world, I think makes sense for us to look at it into a regional market first. So hence we really want to push this alliance, ASEAN alliance for carbon market moving forward, so we can have a high integrity, high project, high quality coming from ASEAN. And then we can use this as a way to finance our NDC, for example, to do our transfer technology. And I think it is important for ASEAN as one of the largest bloc in the world to really work together on this.
I totally agree on that, on all your points. But if any of the speakers would like to add something on that about how the government of Indonesia or ASEAN countries can contribute to actually escalate the price of the car, not escalate, actually to put it in the price that is competitive, that will give incentives for the companies to drive away from the unrenewable energy and give more incentives to the investors. Anyone want to jump in?
So, well, I can give my views from the perspective of international companies. I think it's important that governments take an interest in carbon market activities within their jurisdictions. And there are tools to make sure that these type of projects and activities work in the interest of the country. There needs to be integration between the national priorities, national registries and standards, and the standards used internationally, because at the moment, demand comes from international corporates, companies that invest in carbon offsets worldwide, and they're used to certain types of standards, procedures, type of credits. So if a country wants to take full advantage of this, it has to recognize what already exists and integrate the new national tools and registries with the international ones.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Laila will want to jump in, or we can move forward to the next question. Okay, so the next question from the participants is probably, I think it will be suitable for Andrea actually, but anyone can jump in if you want. How can ASEAN countries collaborate to develop common methodologies for assessing and verifying emission reductions, ensuring consistency and credibility in the trading of carbon credits within the region and globally? You want me to repeat the question again, or is it clear enough?
No, well, I think it's clear.
Sure.
I think international standards are always open to new methodologies, and methodologies need to be suited to the local context. How countries can work together, I think they should support existing activities by the private sector, understand their needs, understand how the activities can contribute to NDCs or other policy objectives. When, if, for example, the project developer requests an authorization under Article 6, under what circumstances that can be granted, when it is beneficial for the country. These are all very complex questions, and I understand sometimes governments are cautious because they have long-term implication for the decarbonization trajectory of a country. So international fora where governments can exchange information, can build capacity together are great opportunities. And we as AITA, we participate in these initiatives and welcome any further support that can be provided to countries in the ASEAN region and beyond.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so for the next question, probably I can address this to Laila. So as you know that countries in ASEAN are mostly developing economies, right? And the price of the carbon is, the question is this: how would you balance to actually balance between the economic development and actually keep making the price of the carbon very competitive? As you know, the price is very problematic. I mean, how can these countries in ASEAN balance achieve those two prongs, I guess? I mean, it's yeah.
Well, it really does come down to the policy of the country, but at least what's happening in the market today is that buyers and traders are valuing projects that give co-benefits to the community around them. So those projects can be used as a way to invest in human capital, to ensure there are biodiversity benefits, for example, on the country. And it really comes down to collaboration between the private and public sectors in a way where investment is driven, it's encouraged. There's a mobilized way for investment, but at the same time, there's a business model that returns profits not only for the project developers, but the communities that are hosting those projects.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone want to add something on Laila's point or to the questions? Okay. Okay, so unfortunately, there are actually 40 questions in the Q&A box, but ladies and gentlemen, but I don't think we can actually address them all. But we will send all those questions to you if you want to, if you're curious about what kind of questions that the participants in Indonesia webinar have about the development of carbon market. And with that last questions, I think we have reached the end of our webinar. Let me thank all the participants for joining today. It has been a very busy and active webinar. Also, can you put my slides on? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I would like to inform you about the flagship events of ASEAN Business Advisory Council, ASEAN-BAC, which will be held on the 3rd and 4th of September this year. As you can see, these are the two flagship events. And next, please. I will also want to invite you to this ASEAN-BAC Indonesia Chairmanship account registration for public. You can see the flows registration here, or you can just scan the QR code for details. I know you have been scanning a lot of things on this webinar, but yes, please, if you would love to join, you please scan it. And lastly, next slide, please. I will ask you to take a look at the ASEAN Carbon Center of Excellence Knowledge Hub for information about carbon trading, and visit the link provided here to rewatch previous practice sharing sessions or for updates on our next events. I mean, I know some of you were probably really interested in learning of some new terms that you learned today, and you can actually access it through this Carbon Center of Excellence Knowledge Hub. I think that's all. A huge thanks to my colleague for responding to the questions. And once again, thank you for all your participation. Looking forward to see you on our next event. The event is now concluded. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laila, Andrea, Pak Darsono. I think it went well. I apologize if there are any mistakes in mispronouncing your name or in the way I talk. Thank you so much, and looking forward to
so
collaborate with
much.
all of you next occasion.
Have a good day. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye.